In this screencast, I'm going to brief you on our sales and marketing strategy for the upcoming year and a particular focus on how we go about the upcoming DEMA show in Orlando. The question I asked myself was, how can we make more money? Well, obviously there's two ways to go about it. You can reduce your costs or you can increase your revenues, preferably do both at once. But in this particular exercise, I also had set up for myself some criteria and constraints. Our workloads mustn't increase. We are only the people on board that we are. We don't have much time, more time than we do. The solutions mustn't cost anything or anything much. And the implementation must be simple, intuitive, and straightforward. So after mulling over things, I performed an analysis and came up with a number of solutions. Mainly, how we can eliminate waste and losses in our handling of our sales and marketing and fine-tune our workflows using the existing mechanisms. 2. Optimize our sales processes and pitches, in particular by preempting and blocking frequently encountered objections we hear from clients. Let's go right in and looking at how we can avoid the losses. I call it plugging the funnel. Some of you may already be aware of the concept in sales and marketing called the sales and marketing funnel. I'm not going to go into details right now, but as you can see from this graphic, it means that if you have a pool of potential customers, is that blue cloud up here, you can try and catch the attention of those by branding, first of all. And when you got their attention, some of these clients will then, through various stages, go on to become customers. But as they go through what we call this funnel, you can lose them at any single stage in the process. And it is known that if you reach out to 1,000 customers anyway, you will not make 1,000 sales. In the end, you will only make, even with the best of efforts and mechanism, only a certain percentage will end up being closed deals. That's only natural. So the exercise is about making sure as many of these actually close, and above all, that we avoid what I call the self-inflicted wounds. The self-inflicted wounds is where we don't do our work properly or have holes in our organization. Now, I have broken down this funnel into sort of three main areas: branding and pre-marketing, which I'm not going to address much here because that's really not the main topic today. Then we've got marketing and sales, and we've got leaks in both marketing and in the sales. And I've listed a few of those here. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It is just a few examples to demonstrate what I'm talking about. For example, we've got insufficient and incomplete research prior to expos. If we want to reach out to other exhibitors at dive shows, it's of no use showing out to the shows and not knowing who's there. We also have matters like content marketing, which is that if we have an article planned ahead about Mexico Bonita or something, that we will in advance of time reach out to the operators with an offer. In order to do so, our client needs to be properly updated, their newsletters needs to be sent out, and so forth. This is often not conducted properly, or in worst cases, not at all, which is an immense waste of money, and because we do produce good articles, really good stuff, so the raw materials are there, so we should pursue those opportunities, and we can do so by plugging these leaks in our marketing funnel. We also have some leaks in the sales stage. That is, for example, not catching leads passed on from marketing. It can be going to shows, you bring home a deck of business cards, you don't follow up, properly, we don't handle things all the way to the end, and making sure we don't lose people just because we don't handle our own sort of follow-up procedures soon enough. There's also details like in sales technique that we go into the sales mode too soon. We all hate the pushy salesman, so we need to have a proper dialogue with the client, win them over so they become more comfortable with dealing. Issues like when we follow up, we don't seem to address the concerns of the customer and we forget to listen. And what's going to be one of the focal points in my presentation today is not preempting and blocking objections beforehand. I'll get into that in a minute, but the point is that we need to sort of just plug all these leaks that I have sort of illustrated here, where leads, good opportunities pour out of our system simply because we don't handle them. In the end, we should hopefully close the deal and then move on to retention of these clients, because once they're on board, we want to keep them on board. That's, however, going to be the subject of another sort of topical presentation a little later. But ask yourself, would you like to earn a bigger commission? Of course you would. Moving on. On this slide, it's called fine-tuning our sales technique and pitches. And what you see here is a lot of screenshots for a video. They actually doesn't at a glance perhaps make a lot of sense to you, but I will explain what it's all about anyway. Rather than reinventing the wheel all over, I went out to find some presentations elsewhere by good salespeople. These are screenshots from a presentation I would like you to watch on YouTube a little later. The URL's here, and I explain you why. We're going to adapt the techniques described by one of the sales gurus. This one's called Victor Antonio. So why him, may you ask? There are lots of good inspirational presenters out there, because I found that his approach in particular appears to be a quite snug fit for our specific needs, and explains quite accurately the case where we have been successful in the past. As you point out, that salespeople tend to focus very much on closing the sales, but if you preempt and remove the objections that the clients that you talk to may have, the sales will actually close itself. So the whole approach we're going to take is that we empathize and put ourselves in the position of our client, and they may have some concerns, but if we address them beforehand, we will end up having a very good and convincing presentation. As the old adage go, you can't really sell, but you can make them buy. At the core of this, there is a technique called, as I mentioned before, preempting and blocking objections. The issue at hand is, by raising the objections ourselves that the customer might have, we own the conversation. Challenge is, if the customer raises objections, two things happen. We get on the defensive. We have to defend ourselves answering. And two, that's also important, that psychology research has shown once you verbalize something, an opinion or objection, you are less likely to back down. It takes more to sway you later because you tie yourself into what you already stated. And you have stated it in writing, even worse. If you have stated it in public, it gets even more difficult. So let's just not go there. So the whole purpose of this exercise I'm going into is to identify beforehand all the concerns and objections any customer may have and build it into our presentation and sales pitches. By doing so, we also come across as more transparent and honest, and we appear to know our shit, because if there's somebody or some entity that knows their shit, pardon my French, that is us. So don't wait for the customer to bring up any objection on the conversation, on the presentation. In order to do so and to aid us, we will have some scripts to serve as inspiration or for us to follow to handle common scenarios. Scenarios are those I've listed here. We're already going to do advertising elsewhere, or we're not really doing any advertising anymore at all. Your rates are too high. Our budget for this year is already spent. Let me think about it. You're international. Oh, we're doing it all blog. Oh, we are going to focus on spending on Google ads and Facebook instead. Nah, we can do it in-house. I've got a couple of IT whiz kids who knows everything about SEO. It's really the office somewhere else you have to talk to. So what I want us all to do is to sift through all correspondence, our memories, emails, to find the most common objections and stalls. And we'll put them into a system, and we'll go over how we handle it. And then we can brainstorm on scenarios and responses. So think about reasons that will make our various segments of clients to buy and reasons why they won't. Moving on. In that whole picture aspect, we also need to be able to clearly communicate our values and virtues, because it's not about price. It never is in sales. It's about values. If value is greater than the price, then it is definitely worth the while to come aboard. So in the back of my mind, it's about why money spent with us is really well spent, not kept in the bank. So I have here made a little matrix where I, on the left over here, got operators, tourism, travel agencies and manufacturers as examples of some of the main segments that we're dealing with. And we have those who are uninitiated and never heard about us or very flaky, those who know of us, the well acquainted, and the regulars. And obviously they all need to be dealt with and communicated with in slightly different manners. So in each case, we have to think about the objections we need to preempt and block, the visuals that we will like to use, form letters, email templates, and so forth, and just repeat all that. They will probably be quite similar once we have sort of honed in on a nice shape, but of course a dive operator need to be addressed in a different manner than a tourism agency or a manufacturer. So the challenge at hand, task at hand right now is how do we create and convey the desired first-hand impression, because right when you meet people, first-hand impressions matter. When you open an email, you glance it, at 10 seconds you form your opinion. So how do we get that first impression just right? Focusing on our values and what we can provide to help their business. B, we also need a clear and concise message about our deliverables. That's a fancy new word, because I want to get away from all the advertising page speak, because it may just anchor the clients in old and now obsolete beliefs. What is required is that we create new visuals and we reword and redesign our media info. So there's a lot to do, but just as a quick peek. On a side note, we're also going to put our media information on a new website. I'm building from Acroscope Media. A slight advantage of doing that because it will also signal that the magazine itself is just part of a much bigger entity. I'm not going to go into details of this aspect right now, because otherwise this particular presentation will be too long. We'll get back to that. Valuation of segments, aka finding out where there's business to be made. Now, this is kind of a little bit digression, so I'm just going to go over this a bit quickly. But the point of this exercise is, if we look at the DEMA show floor plan, which is copied in here, a lot of segments are actually already marked in here. For example, over here, this is the Indonesia pavilion. Here we got the Bahamas pavilion, and we got some tech companies here and there. So how do we pick and choose? Here we are. How to pick which of these guys do we want to go after? Who is most worth the time? So a little mental exercise is that we can size the revenue streams, which means we take the number of opportunities, which can be the number of operators in a region, like in Bahamas, or number of dive photo gear manufacturers. We estimate the win rate. How many businesses or how many sales can we close, and what's the average sale? That gives the total amount of revenue we can expect to make in that segment. Down here, don't worry too much about the actuals, but I just put in some hypothetical numbers. So mapping the verticals, the values, and possible return of investment in US dollars. So in Indonesia, there may be X amount of operators willing, excited about coming on board. There may be a tourism willing to take out a big advertising package. And if you do your numbers, and of course nobody can do this accurately, but it's just a mental exercise anyway, there may be a potential revenue stream in Indonesia worth of 80k. And once you sort of go about sort of mapping out the whole dive industry, it will become apparent that there are some areas that are definitely more worth our time than others. But no matter, let's just move on to the next subject matter. That is indeed how we go about DEMA show. And now we are getting really down into a tactical practicalities. So DEMA show is starting as of this presentation in exactly 2 months. It's September 1st. The show starts on November 1st. So in order to prep, the first thing we have to do is to go over the DEMA exhibitor listing, to reconcile and update our SuperOffice CRM system with data from the exhibitors list over here. Once we have gone through, and I say this is a little bit of a tedious job to do, and I hope that we can share it a little bit. We tag the contacts with DEMA 2017 so we can pick them out. It's very easy to do. There's a checkbox in the system under interest, so we can just tag them once we enter them. More on that later as well. Then we look at the DEMA show floor plan. As you've seen before, we use this floor map to decide which primary and secondary segments we want to target leading up to and during the expo. We have a little meeting. Okay, granted, we are all separated by many time zones, but in principle, let's get our heads together, discuss which of these segments we can handle, because surely we can't handle all of these. I mean, just look at the amount. We have to pick and choose and be selective. Once we do that, and we agree on and define a number of campaigns, angle, and pitches using the techniques and principles just listed, we start crafting the form letters, the visuals, and so on. In SuperOffice, we also top up the selected segments with non-DEMA targets too. What do I mean by that? For example, if we decide to go after the Bahamian operators, it may not be all of them that go to DEMA and are present. But if we are going to do a mail campaign or sales campaign directed towards the Bahamian operators, we should just as well get them all in. So we put those into the system as well. A little bit more tedium involved because we have to check patties, registers, nowies, and so forth to make sure that our system is updated. We put all these into SuperOffice, and from here on we can then start executing email campaigns and starting calling follow up according to the set procedures. So wrapping it all up again, if we just conduct our business in a more consistent and watertight manner, it need not take more time to do so. As I like to say, it doesn't take more time to do things right than to doing wrong. As my old dad was fond of saying, efficiency is the highest form of laziness. So let's do this right and make the next year a really productive and profitable one. Thank you for listening.